All right. We have another episode, Ambassador for Peace podcast. I am so honored and humbled to have Sudi Burnett. She is a Persian American legendary right here in California. She has a huge history. My parents, all the people definitely remember her. And now she is a spiritual teacher, a guru, really active. And I came across to her and I was so inspired to have you, Sudi. Sudi, thank you for coming here. I'm honored for you having here.
Namaste and thank you so much, Ehsan. I'm so grateful. The honor is mine to be here with you, one of the loveliest people on the planet Earth, and with your audience.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here. Sudi, would you mind share a little bit about your background, your story, so my audience get to learn more about you and who you are? And I would love to share that a little bit about us.
Sure. Well, as you mentioned, I was born in Iran in a fairly large family. I'm the last kid with the 10 years age difference from my last brother. So although I grew up in a large family, but I felt growing up alone. And that was one part of feeling lonely. But the other part, I'm not sure, Ehsan, if I share that with you, it was that from the time I started to know myself, which was at a very young age, I just kind of feeling that I didn't belong. I didn't belong. These weren't my family. Why was I here? And I was questioning everything, even my gender. Like I felt like I should have been born as a boy. What's going on here? There is a huge mistake. And of course, that's when my ego was just taking place and it just was getting familiar with this character and all that. So basically, I felt very lonely, but I started at a very young age. I think it was like 4 or 5. When everyone left in the morning, I just started wandering around in the yard and I was fascinated by nature. I was fascinated by leaves and trees and flowers and everything. And I used to do this play with myself every single day that I would cut all of the some flowers, some herbs, some whatever, and I would use a stone and I would smash this up and make a soup. And in a child's imagination, it was like when people start eating this soup, they all gonna feel better. They're gonna become happy.
Wow.
Fast forward now that I realize that I'm a shaman, I understand that was a recollection, reconnecting to another life, a past life that I have been a shaman.
Wow.
So yeah, that's how it started. Everything was great. I grew up in a very loving, nurturing family, especially since I was the little kid. But the Cinderella life that I had all of a sudden blew up when at age 10 my father passed away.
Mm.
And the way it happens, son, is like I was at my older sister, and my nieces and my nephews are the same age. So I used to spend the summer at my older sister. And one day in the afternoon, my brother-in-law got a phone call and I watched him like some tears start running down his eyes. So I was 10, and at that time, I just felt that he was really touched deeply, and it was something much bigger than what he said, because he told my sister, pack your stuff, we're going, your uncle has passed away. And my youngest uncle at the time, he had cancer. So, but I didn't buy it. I just felt that he didn't cry for my uncle. You know what I mean? It was something else, something more profound. So
Yeah.
anyhow, after a week time, we went to my house and they told me, since my father was the older brother, the funeral is going to be at our place. There was a huge crowd of people. And I don't know if you know, Ehsan, Iranian
Yes.
funeral, as
Brief.
dramatic as we are, it could take months and months.
Yeah.
So anyhow, it was that day when I was playing with all my cousins and my nieces and nephew. All of a sudden at 2 p.m., I felt very tired. My whole energy dropped down. And I said, I think I need to go take a nap. Looking back now, that was the first time I went into a trance. So as soon as I laid my head back, I saw my father is driving, is night. There is another guy sitting next to him. And my father was smoking. He had a cigarette with his left hand. The window was down. And suddenly this bright light faced him. He lost control and he went down the alley, and I went with him. I experienced my father's death myself. And I jumped out and I started crying and I said, you guys have been lying to me. My father is dead. But that was the time when I started having connection with my father's spirit. And then it went on and on. So pretty soon after that, I told my mother, you should send me to America. And my father was guiding me. My father
Wow.
used to come every night, Ehsan. I would wake up and the two night lamps would start lightening up, and I would get very excited because I knew the spirit of my father is coming. He would sit next to me on my bed, and then he would tell me what's going on in the future. So he told me that I would be leaving Iran and I would be, he didn't exactly said America, or maybe he said because you're in semi-trance, but he said you're moving far away, and it's going to be totally a different scenery, different language, different culture, everything. So somehow from that on, I start bugging my mother that you should send me to America. And for the following 7 years, all I was thinking was, how would I make it to US? And
Wow.
finally, at age 17, I find a way and I left Iran.
Wow. That's amazing. So you were guided. Your father became one of your spiritual guide and I led you. This is where you're supposed to be. That's amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Incredible. Yes.
Yeah. So when I was flying over, I was just thinking that um, how I need to stand on my own feet. I didn't want to get any money from my family. I didn't want to raise a hand to anyone. And I promised myself that I'm going to become the superhuman, right? So I was planning like, what is the quickest way as soon as I get here? Where would I live? Where would I find a place? How would I make the money? And as soon as the play was landing in LA, I remember that it's 40 years ago, but it's just like today. I said,
Wow.
oh my God, I'm finally home. And the plane hasn't landed yet, but I felt this belonging. And I said, I am finally home. So,
Easy.
yeah.
Easy. Wow. Yes. So what happened then?
Well, when I left Iran when the revolution happened, and a lot of because I was living in a very wealthy family, and the neighborhood was very exclusive. And I had a few of our neighbors, as soon as the revolution happened, they left Iran and they took a lot of money, as we know. So basically, the kids who were my age, they were living a luxury life because their parents bought huge mansion, on San Vicente and here and there. And at the time they were living with the interest rate, which I still remember, it was 12%. We used to
Wow.
get 12% interest rate when you put your money in the bank. So
Yeah.
what I did, I stayed with 2 weeks with one of my friends. And then I find a one-bedroom apartment, and right away, I start looking for a job. So the first job that I find, of course, most of us was in the restaurant, and I start working 12 to 14 hours at the restaurant, also sign up for college. So I was paying for college and my rent and expenses. And then few years into the restaurant, I did a lot of changes. I was pretty good because my oldest brother in Iran, he was very classy and he built many restaurants and things. So I grew up with that. I saw how the restaurants are being built. I knew what class is and what is classy, what is not. So I had that backup experience, and I transformed that restaurant while I was going to college full time. And then I was getting paid really, really well. But after about 2.5 years, I said to myself, I said, although this is great and all that, but this is not what I really want to do. What I really wanted to do, Ehsan, was I was very fascinated, like I said, with herbs, supplementation, nutrition, health, and all that. So I started studying science of sport and nutrition. And from that point on, I switched to be a personal trainer. And I worked for many, many years as a personal trainer. And then I switched to become a life coach. So the past 20 some years, I've been working as a life coach. But generally, most Iranian people, they remember Sudi as this health guru because I got on television the year 2000, and I was having a show on many different TV station, Iranian TV stations. So I was the first Iranian woman who was promoting to become a bodybuilder, and it's so it was very fashionable for Iranian, and I knew a lot about health and nutrition and supplementation and all that. So I grew very, very big. And then it's really funny, Ehsan, because as I changed my field, people just went with it. And I have no idea. I think there's a divine plan by it. Because as soon as I changed from health and fitness and all that into life coaching, all of my followers or clients followed me into that realm. And from 17, 18 years ago, when healing and shamanism just fell in my lap, from that point on, they all accepted me and they said, we accept her as a spiritual guru. So I still don't know what's that about.
So that's amazing. So I know you're very active, you're very focused on spiritual growth, inner healing, and health and fitness was something in the past that was your focus. But right now, I noticed that that's something that a friend of mine that was talking highly speaking of you is actually he was one of my collector. He said like Sudi is incredible. She's a shaman. She's a psychic. She just saved my life in so many ways. And I was just like really intrigued, and that's how the connection happened. And lo and behold, I love to have you here. Now, thank you for the introduction. So this podcast is the focus is about peace, and I'm going to ask you some question about in that topic, and I would love to get your view about that. This is something is I'm passionate, and this is part of my vision. And I would love to ask you, like, what does peace mean to you?
Peace to me is a natural state of being. So if we separate this world, the third dimension, as inner world and outer world, to me, peace is a natural state of us human, as light and love is. So we are never separated from what is. The only thing that we can talk about more, we can collaborate about it if you wish, is what separates us from this peace, what separates us from our lights, from our love, from our true nature, which is peaceful and loving and all acceptance, which is you and I know is the ego mind.
Now,
So,
well, if that's the part of our nature, right?
yeah.
And we look at the human history, as of now, there has not been much of that. I mean, and there is no consistent peace. And why there's no peace between us? As of today, I mean, we live in a modern time. We look around the world, there's so many wars and conflict. What's your view about that? Why are there no peace? between us?
I believe Ehsan is the way we're looking at this lens. If I can just tell you how I see the world is, I always say, if I divide people from the middle, if you imagine that the right side is this powerful, magnificent device, as we call it, the mind, and behind that is the ego, and your left side is heart and soul, which your soul is the whole knowing. So I always say, the way you view outside, whether it's peace, your experience is peace or war, it depends which part are you coming from. Because the lens that makes the movie from the ego mind is always chaotic. It's always something going on. It's for the growth, actually, which is also divinely planned to be this way. And the left side is the heart and soul. And sometimes jokingly, I say, okay, if we all came from heart and soul and we were all loving being, so what would be the difference between third dimension and the 8 and above dimension? You know what I mean? So if at some point I can add this part where my information is coming from, is because 30 some years ago, I had a intense car crash and I had a near-death experience. So everything that I'm telling you or I'm telling my people is when I had a near-death experience and my soul left my body right away and I went to, I don't know what we call it, we can call it our real home or whatever. This was my understanding.
That's how you felt when you had that near experience. It was feeling like home.
Yes. So as soon as the experience, even when I heard from other people, is that first part is quite the same for everybody. Like the crash happened, boom, and my body left, my soul went right away, and you become so light. You're just a feather. It's just like, you know how it felt? It just felt like, when you have nothing to do and you just sitting by the pool and you're just having your drink, there's nothing to do, nowhere to go, no rush, your mind is quiet. That's how it felt. I felt like I'm just transcending and this is awesome. And I remember vividly that I said, thank God it's finally over.
Mm,
And
wow.
going faster and faster, and you go through the tunnel, and all of a sudden you enter this place, and there are all these angelic God. The love that you feel instantly, Ehsan, oh my God, is just, there's nothing here on planet Earth, no human being love. It doesn't matter. I have a lot of followers, they die for me. But even when I get the love and all that, that's different. I don't know how to explain it. It's just the unconditional love. And what happens is, as soon as I entered, I sat with a few guides, and there was a huge screen with so many lives. And because when we leave the third dimension, we are separated from the ego mind, our vibration is so high that I understood right away that all of these screens is me, different lifetimes,
Wow.
right? So telepathically, I asked, I said, are these all me? Because one is like 1920, the other one is 2000, the other one is ahead of this time, 2050. And they said, yes, these are all you. And they corrected me because I said, are these all my past lives? And they made a correction. They said, oh, no, no, no. There's no time and space here. All of these lives are happening on a parallel universes continuously. So it all depends on our consciousness. For instance, right now, my consciousness is here and I'm seeing Ehsan and I are having a conversation with his audience, right?
Right.
In a split of second, my conscious would flip to another parallel universe, which I can be a painter as great as you are, but the mind and ego doesn't have the capability with all of this transition that happens in a split of second to a parallel universe to bring that with it. So in a way, I can tell you, like the hard drive of the brain is not big enough to be able and sharp enough to make the switch. I'm here on this universe, I'm here, I'm here, I'm here. So every time you and I make this transit, we are connected to the mind and ego. And the mind and ego has the whole recording of our story. When I was a kid, when I was 10 years old, when it was blah, blah, blah. But as soon as my conscious switched to another one, the whole line of that line story becomes real. So basically, I can say mind and ego exist in each parallel universe with the soul, but the flipping or switching does not happen. The mind is not capable of doing that. Is that too complicated or no?
No, I love that. So how do we tie it back to why there is no peace between us?
So why there is no peace is because we have to ask this question: who is the one who's asking this question? And who is the one who's not experiencing peace?
Wow, that's getting very deep here. Sudi, these are great. I mean, as some people that are in spirituality, I'm very passionate in spirituality. I think I kind of get it, but I'm gonna ask some challenging question here. Is that okay? What if somebody from Palestine, all of this parents, everybody are dead right now and listening to you?
Yeah.
What would you say to that person?
I would
And
say,
then would you tell them, like, just what you just told me, is who is it that viewing this?
yeah. Well, that's basically my teaching. I mean, this is my teaching. It is not my teaching. It goes way, way, way back from the beginning of time with the gurus and all that. Ramana is one of I love Ramana. He was from 1700. I don't know if you know him or not. But basically, what I would say to him is really ask the question: who is experiencing all of these fights and everything that's going on? And if you and I really believe that everything is divinely planned, do we all say, when you ask somebody, do you believe in God? Of course I do. Do you believe in the universe? Yes, of course. But we really don't. Because if we did, we never ever question what's going on here. I don't see the war in Palestine as a bad thing. Who am I to say that's a bad or good thing? Because I believe there is a divine plan. He knows better. And in everything that is happening through the lens of ego mind, is translate to bad and good. But we don't know that everything is here to serve us. I don't know that. You don't know that. The Palestinian guy who's hurting right now doesn't know that. But that's the truth. The universe is just a mirror, right? Whatever vibration I'm sending out is matching it up. The war is not my experience. Why? Because I know there's two places. I know that there's a place within me, reside within me, that is always in silence, that is always in peace. And I know there's an outer world. But because I come from my inner world, from a higher understanding. There is a higher power who knows everything, and he planned everything, and everything is divinely planned. And even that, the war, it's a lesson. So I would say to the Palestinian guy, I said, you have a choice to see that as injustice. You can get mad and angry. You can animate an energy of anger, hatred, send more negativity to the mix of what you have, or you have another choice. You can come to yourself and say, how else could this mean? How could this war in the future be the best thing that happens here? What's the lesson? Before we judge any situation, Ehsan, I think we should.
So what I'm ultimately, this is very deep, and I'm really enjoying it. Somebody that's sitting here, that not in the middle of the war zone, it's very healing to look at this way. I can only, imagine when somebody is in the middle of it, will they even be receptive to this kind of information? I mean, from you and I, we are not sitting in that situation. So what I'm ultimately hearing from you, thank you sharing that. I love hearing these different views. So, when I asked like why there is no peace, ultimately indirectly you're telling me who says that there is no peace. There's always been peace. Peace is everywhere. It depends on who is talking. Is this Ehsan, the eagle that living in this surface, is asking that kind of questions? Obviously, is that really who you are? Is that kind of what I'm hearing from you, or
Yeah.
now
Yeah.
if I start asking questions like why there's been so many wars and conflicts since the history that we know as of today, what's your answer for that?
My answer is history is here for us to experience and learn from it instead of judging it.
Okay.
Once I remember that Earth school, what do you call this third dimension? Earth schooling, is because we keep forgetting that from the minute that you and I wake up, it's a test, it's a school, right? So I have learned, and trust me, I haven't been here. I had in my youth age, I was diagnosed with OCD. They wanted to give me some medication to numb me down, dumb me down. My brain was working too fast. I had ADHD. And I'm coming from that background. I'm coming from a background that two voices constantly were arguing in my head. And I don't see that as anything bad. I know today why I was diagnosed with all of that is because it gave me another choice instead of being medicated, instead to start knowing the mind. Where is all this coming from? I didn't trust the neurologist or psychologist that I need to be dumbed down to slow down the brain wave. I didn't believe in that. Instead of doing that, I questioned them. Why would I trust you? Why would I think that you're right? So I chose a different path. I said, I'm gonna really get to know this sophisticated machine. I studied psychology myself. I studied neurology. I started knowing how the brain works. And once I realized how the brain works, it helped me tremendously. And now I'm teaching everybody today, no, this machine is really complicated. It has a lot of bad side and good side. It all depends. How do you use the knife? Do you use the knife to cut your meal, or do you use it to hit somebody, right? So the brain is the same thing. But I understand what I'm trying to tell you is like, I didn't wake up enlightened to say, oh, I suffered. But during my suffering, I keep learning there are other ways. But what you're saying to me right now, Ehsan, I get what you're saying, right? I'm getting like, okay, that guy would not understand you. He's under so much hurt. But this is what I do every day with my client, with my webinars, with my shows. I chose to not dumb down my information because I say people don't get me, right? I'm going to keep the level of my information high. Even if it's two people who can understand me, great. But I'm not going to dumb down my information and just say, yeah, you know, I feel you and you're right. And no, this is too complicated. You don't want to know this. That hasn't been my choice. So I have chosen to keep the level of consciousness higher. And I get it. Even Iranian people who speak Farsi in my Farsi language, a lot of them say to me, it took me 2 years to understand what you were saying. But Ehsan, we still did it. 2 years, she has transformed.
Speaking about a different truth, a deeper level of a truth, and you're not shy about it. That's kind of what I'm hearing from you. What if there was war zone right here around your neighborhood? Like, you know, you were a victim over it. How would you handle this? Would you handle it this way, or?
First of all, I wouldn't see myself victim. How would I become victim if there's a war here?
You know, your child, your children, your family member are just got, you know, bombed and killed, and your neighborhood is just teared off, and there's a middle of, you know, we are in the middle of this right now. Right now, where you live right now, there's ongoing war and conflict and chaos. Is this how you would handle it? The same way that you kind of sharing it? And I'm asking deeper questions, serious questions here. But these are the things that people will ask. Like, you know, is this how Sudi will behave?
Essential, I totally get you, but I'm still going to give you the same answer. But
Please
if
go ahead. No, I want to hear it first.
you don't get that part, well, here's the thing. Let me give you an example. Like, you know, when I left Iran, I told you I was 17. I was the last kid. I was spoiled to death, whatever. But after a while, I start communicating with my parents. I mean, some of the things that I'm teaching, I teach a lot of things, but one part is detachment. As Buddha said,
Mm.
get rid of your attachment. If you're attached to somebody, you will always suffer, right? So basically, to me, if it's my kid or my family or a kid in Africa, they're all the same. I'm not going to get upset or mad because it's my kid. I mean, I don't have kid, but anyway, you know what I'm saying. You get the picture. To me, we are all one. So it doesn't matter who it is. If it's in my neighborhood right here that the war is happening, and I've been into war zone before, it's not like I haven't experienced it, right? But even in the midst of all of that, I was telling somebody, some of the kids that working with me, I was telling them, I said, I remember when the war happened between Iran and Iraq and it was curfew, nobody can leave the house. As soon as everything shut down and it got quiet at 11 o'clock, I would start walking with my dog, right? I wasn't fearful about his curfew, you shouldn't leave your house. And right now the bomb is going around. So what I'm saying is you can call me crazy, you can call me careless, or you can say anything. But to me, even when I'm in the midst of all this, Ehsan, I'm not saying that I'm going to skip it, but I'm saying I know another place that is always peaceful and is always calm. So even when you learn to go within, your outside becomes the trauma and drama and dharma and karma becomes much less. It becomes more fluid. You can pass through it much easier, right? I mean, look at Nelson Mandela. After all this year, he walked out and he was like, oh, okay, why is he a hero? Because he realized that there is a higher consciousness. It's awakening. And I always say, listen, guys, instead of us waking up in the morning, you choose every second, going to our Instagram and this, that, and news and all of this thing. Instead of that, start with 5 minutes quiet time to go within. So if you start doing that 5 minutes and you come within, you realize that awareness is an energy field that is always here. Look at everything, Ehsan. Awareness, kindness, compassion, empathy, peace, love. These are constant. These are always here, right? Even if your ego becomes huge, even though you, whatever you do, these are always here. So who is the real you? This is what I'm trying to teach people. Who is the real you? The one that comes and goes is never real. The one that is constant, consistently here is you. So if you come from a higher consciousness, wouldn't you see the war and bombing and everything else differently?
Maybe just an illusion.
Mhm.
Yes. Now, this is great. Thank you. So I'm curious to ask. So, what are your spiritual exercises? Do you meditate daily, or pray, or what do you do on a regular basis?
Well, to be honest with you, I don't do any of that.
Wow.
I was never a meditator in my life. Like I said, this healing and all of this, it just fell down in my lap. That's another story. It's a long story because I was a personal trainer. I was a TV hostess. I was pursuing my acting. I wasn't even into this enlightenment. I didn't even know what healing was, right? So maybe in another talk, we can talk about this. But basically, the exercise that I give everyone, it calls thought cut silent. I made that up as
No, I'd love to hear it.
so thought cut silent. I said, look, scientifically, each mind will make 75 to 95,000 thoughts per day, right? So my mind, my brain creates 75 to 95,000 thoughts per day. There's no exception. And I said, till you realize that you are not the thoughts, you get engaged with it and you go crazy and you see this, you see the war, you see injustice, you see there is no peace here, right? So thought cut silent is, you remember, I call the brain the thinking machine. I said, I call it thinking machine. I call it a factory that constantly creating and producing thoughts. So thought cut silence is from the first second that you realize your mind is getting your attention. It's saying, Ehsan, your art, what about peace, da, da, da. Imagine that you have a golden scissor in your hand and you cut right after the first word. What would remain after that, Ehsan? If you cut after the first word, the minute your mind wants to get your attention and say, hey, Ehsan, and you cut it, what remains?
Silence. Nothing. There's no thoughts, right?
Till this machine, the production takes this, imagine 75 to 95,000, meaning it's going like this. So it grabs the next one and you cut it, peace, millisecond of silence. Next thought, boom. I said meditation is fantastic, but how long do you meditate? 15 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours max? What happens to the rest of 20 or 22 hours that this mind is just loose and is going around? That's why I said thought cut silence. It's a 24 hours practice.
Wow. Like whatever you do, you just tell me more. Yeah, tell me more. Like how, like on a regular basis, you're aware and trying to
Yeah.
disconnect.
So what Yeah. So what you do, first thing, I have two practices. One is thought cut silence that you cut it. I even made the animation. I gotta send it to you. I have them made
Yeah, I'd
this.
love to see it. Yes.
Okay. So the first practice is thought cut silence, right? So from the minute you wake up, you tell yourself that, is my phone here? No, where is it? I don't know. Anyway, they make it even on a screen. They took my picture and they wrote thought cut silence. So a lot of people, they put that on their wallpaper. I keep telling them, put it on your phone that every 2 minutes it gives you notification, thought cut silence for you to remember. Write it down and make a sticker. Put it on next to your laptop. Put it on your fridge. Put it everywhere. So wherever you turn around, you see thought cut silent. That helps you at the beginning to do it, to remember. Because oftentimes people tell me, and remember, I've been doing this for 20 years, so I hear a lot of feedback. People tell me, as long as I'm doing the practice, thought cut silence, I feel better. Everything goes my way. The minute I forget, things goes bad, right? So
Wow.
how would you, what do you have to do, Ehsan, to constantly be aware and remember to do this? And I tell you what, often I tell people, I said, listen, if you understand, because even while I'm talking and I'm giving you this tool, Ehsan, is your mind and ego who's listening, right? I said, once this live is gone, 2 seconds, your mind is going to keep going at it. What does she know? Who does it know? Who knows? It's hard, it's difficult. Well, I have things to do, I have life to. So, your mind will take you again. I said, you have to tell your mind, what is the trophy I would get if I do thought cut silence 24 hours? The
Love to-
trophy, huh?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Yes.
The trophy is that you experience a place that is mindless. All of the downloads that I get, Ehsan, comes from that space.
Mm.
You can call it mindless. You can call it zero limit. And
Wow.
I tell you, in a couple of my trances, I saw that Mozart, the notes were just coming down to you, especially for you, Ehsan. You're so creative and all these things. You will relate, it would help people if they could
Yes.
really reach this mindless.
So in a tangible way, is it, do you sit, in a posture, or do you just being, is it awareness on a day-to-day what activity?
Yeah, you can walk and do this. You can, while you're washing dishes,
Wow.
think about this on mindfulness. When we use the word mindfulness, meaning you are mindful at every second, right? So mindfulness meaning when you're washing the dishes, you're you're smelling the soap, when you're washing your hair, what happens when you wash your hair, Ehsan? You're taking a shower. Your mind is going 1,000 times, and a lot of people say, "Oh, that's great! I got my greatest idea." When I don't believe that, right? So imagine from now on, you tell yourself, you say, "Ehsan, when we take a shower, we're just going to do the practice of thought cut silence." You're sitting and driving somewhere. Instead of you get tricked by your mind that thinking is telling you what to do or what is your next step. Instead, when you're sitting in a traffic, tell yourself, Ehsan, now is the time to do thought called silence, right?
So does that mean just being present in the moment what everything's going on, or
You have to be present, Ehsan, to remember to do the thought called silence, right?
so is it beyond being present in the moment? This method, thought caught silence?
So thought called silence need awareness. You have to be aware and present to do it. If you're not aware or present, your mind will take over.
So that's the kind of foundation.
There you go. Yes, they go hand in hand, right? Awareness, mindfulness, thought called silence, they all come in a package. If you're not aware, your mind is taking control, right? If you're not doing the thought silence, that means your mind is doing the show. So these all come together. But the trophy is, once you manage to do this, you experience the zero limit. That's where you get connected to the wholeness. All the
You may receive information, that's part of it, see things, feel things, hear things. Okay, so what I'm hearing is as a tangible, maybe for me to examine, like my mind might go, wonder. That's the opportunity, just cut it. I mean, just, don't get there and just be here. And, just, cut yourself from that. That's kind of what you mean. Am I correct?
absolutely.
Okay. Do you meditate at all, or like wake up, or you just don't anymore? Or did you in the past, or?
No, I was never a meditator, because I wasn't a meditator. When I walked, I just said, I did a reel one day. I said, one day I was going for a walk. Listen to this, there has a point in it. My mind said to me, meaning I already understand that the mind is a separate device. My mind said to me, how about every morning when you wake up, set your mind into 0 kilometer. Like if you could play around with the kilometers in your car, like right now is 110 miles. If you put it at 0, you're starting from. So my mind told me, he says, just like you can put the car on 0 miles or kilometer, why don't you do this with your mind? And I said to my mind, I said, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for telling me. But how about right now, as I'm walking, we have respect for each other's space. You do your work, which is making thoughts, and I walk in nature with no mind and in peace. My mind accepted that, and therefore I continue walking mindlessly, and my mind, I don't know what he was talking about because I wasn't paying any attention to it.
It's amazing. What does ego means to you? What does that mean to you?
Ego, from what I understood, like when I had near-death experience, the way it was explained to me is our twin, the shadow, because when we're up there, there's no separation, right? So when we are at the higher plane, there's no separation, meaning, of course, we don't have a physical body. You just know each other from the vibration or energy. Since we are one, there is no mission, there is nothing to feel separated. It's just a wholeness or one nature of just being. So they explained to me, they said, once you're here, because your vibration is high, you are the same as God. There is no separation between God and you. But then again, I come up there and I say, well, I want to experience being a God that made all the creation. And God said, okay, my child, you can go. I'm going to send you for an upgrade to the 3rd dimension, earth plane. The minute we come here, we need an opponent to become strong. My opponent is my ego, which is born with me and we live together. So that's the whole point. My ego is it's my twin. My ego is my shadow side. My ego is all my identities. My ego is every label, OCD, ADHD, lazy, blah, blah, blah. These are all my ego. And whoever I think I am is my ego. So in my teaching, I said, everybody claims they want to be egoless. I said, okay, you're egoless. When I asked you, who are you? You said, nobody. I said, what's your name? You say, I don't have any name. I said, what's your gender? You said, nothing. I said, what do you do? You said, nothing. I said, what are you? How do you feel? Nothing. Then you're egoless. Besides that, everything else is the ego. And we love our ego. We should love our ego. I love my ego. I'm like, thank you very much. You helped me out till now. It was a tough journey, but thank you. I survived.
Interesting. Interesting putting it that way. Now, we live in this 3D dimensional reality. In this 3D reality with these bodies and humanity and, with 8 billion of us, it looks like, with these eyes, from this aspect, dimension, there is no peace. There has never been peace as we understood it with these kind of devices. Now, so when I ask why there is no peace, I'm hearing that, who said there is no peace? And now, is there, do you think that we can, and is there a way that we can actually experience peace the same way that there's democracy and, how we evolved from slavery? Is there a way that humanity can experience global peace, and how is that? What do you think?
I think that for now, at this space of time, collectively, it's not possible. Individually, yes, it's possible. I'm feeling it. Maybe that guy in Palestine doesn't. If you ask me when, it's kind of tough because I have to, what I'm going to say is it might not resonate with a lot of people because I'm going to say it anyway, so you know what was in my mind. What I was going to say is this. This character here, the Palestinian guy who is in war and doesn't experience peace, just the next parallel universe, he's been sitting in an island and, having his cigar and, traveling on his boat and that stuff. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, yeah.
So I, as a soul, don't have one life. So I can tell you this Sudi as you know it right now, she's experiencing peace. She's teaching peace to humanity. She's doing so many things, books, writing books, webinars, seminars, retreat, everything. And people gradually are getting it. So I don't believe, I never had anything in darkness. I don't believe darkness is bad. I believe people who think there's a 1% and the darkness that's doing that. I believe once you and I start separating ourselves from the mind and ego who's experiencing, not experiencing the peace, or is not justice, what they saying there. Once you and I, the more you and I separate ourselves from the ego mind and come from the heart and soul, the more light we emanate outside, the faster, the quickest we experience peace. So you ask me, you say, this lifetime for me? No. This lifetime for you? Probably not. But but then again, as they say from higher above, there is no time and space. Depends on which reality you're living in. In another reality is the new earth. People are living in a new earth. They're all enlightened. They're all experiencing peace. So it depends consciously what level you're in. I thought I did a 5 months webinar. Third dimension, what's the difference between third dimension and fifth dimension? And I explained that. Third dimension, you and I are all mind and ego. Forget about the soul. Nobody is coming from the soul. Let's not make this thing any more complicated. No heartfelt, no soul. So we're just on the third dimension. We're all dealing with ego and mind, right? Once we come to a higher consciousness, we don't see our ego as enemy, and we kind of say, okay, this is my twin, instead of beating it up, because the majority of people are telling me, how can I get rid of it? How can I get rid of it? And I'm like, don't go that route. That's a negative way. That's a negative approach. So while we start accepting our shadows, we see that, yes, true. Our ego is bringing a lot of shadows up. Once we start loving it and we start loving the ego and start coming from a place of non-judgment, then eventually we move, merge in the fifth dimension is all about this duality, ego, mind, soul, heart, merging together and becoming one in peace. That's the level of consciousness. So a lot of people who are feeling and experiencing life and joy and peace, they're coming from a higher consciousness, higher vibration. The one who don't, they sing wars. So it all depends. Are those, because the one who come from a higher vibration, they're just having fun. They're enlightened, ecstasy, everything is okay, right? No judgment, is all good, is all lessons, is all divinely planned. When do those group who are suffering and seeing war and injustice, when are they willing to upgrade? That's the question.
Ladies and gentlemen, this was Sudi Burnett. I have nothing else to say. It was mind-blowing. It's definitely shaken my mind myself. I wanted to process this later. It was beautiful. Thank you. This was beautiful. Thank you for sharing. Another powerful event. Now, Sudi, if people want to find you, how can they find you? They want to look up to you, or do you have any places that they can find you?
Thank you so much. You just Google Sudi Burnett, S-U-D-I, Burnett, B-U-R-N-E-D-D. I come on Instagram, I come on YouTube, Facebook, everywhere. But thank you so much. It was great. Thank you so much, Ehsan, for having me here.
I'm honored.
You're one of the loveliest human beings that I know. I know many, and you are one of them. And thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here. I'm honored.